Greetings, score users. This is a continuation of the third demo of the labels program, focusing on the SEPFILE procedure. And here we are looking at this page from the Elliott Carter score soundings, where we have three systems on the page, Frenched in a very severe manner, in which only the staves that contain notes are actually displayed, with the exception of the bottommost system, where I am retaining the percussion 2 staff and the contrabass staff simply because they're used in the system above, and it looks a little imbalanced if you take them out. And on the next page we have two systems, also only displaying those staves that have notation. Well, to do part extraction, we really need a score where every staff is displayed. And for some of the staves and the source score, we may have had, like flutes 1 and 2, on a single shared staff. We might want to copy them to individual flute 1 and flute 2 staves, and then strip out the unnecessary voice on each staff, and then put in cues and that kind of thing. And this is where labels comes to the rescue, because it can take a score like this and it can identify the individual systems within the pages of the score, and then pull out those systems and create a new sequence of files that represent those systems with all the staves present. And for a project like this, you need many more than 32 staves, which is the maximum number of staves you can have in a single score file. So we have to use tiled files, which is what we covered in the previous demo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to invoke the SEPFILE procedure on this file and the next one, and what it will do is it will find this system and then produce a tiled file sequence that represents it, and it will find this system and produce a tiled file sequence that represents it, and so on. And the result will be a series of super German pages that show every single possible staff. So now let's go to that and do it immediately. So labels, and then here is I'm going to be reading in this little file named N that has the two source files in it, CO1 and CO2. So labels, I switch N, and then SEPFILE, and the first file name in our sequence I've decided will be Z01A. So the topmost system will be Z01 at A, B, C, D, E, F, and then the next system will be Z02, A, B, C, D, E, F, and so on. And here we go. So it's reading through the C files, it's finding the individual systems, and it's now creating these new Z files, and now it's done. So now if we go into score, we can look to see what has happened. And here is the first Z file. And before we just had the English horn staff by itself and the source file, and now it's there along with all the other staves that comprise that tile of the page. And we have piccolos, flutes, and oboes. And then here's the B file, and it contains the E-flat clarinet, and the bass clarinet, and the contrabass clarinet, plus all the regular B-flat clarinets, and bassoons and contrabassoon. Here's the horns, trumpets. See, they weren't being used in the source file, but they're represented now, and so we can do cueing and that kind of thing, and copy things around where we want them. And likewise, for the remaining systems from the source files, we have, here's the Z02 sequence, here's the Z03 sequence, and so on. Okay, well, let's say that we'd like to create a French scoring of sorts that isn't as severe as the one found in the source files. And those source files, I basically, with just one exception, threw out all the staves that did not have notation. Let's say that we want to create systems where we have staves for instruments that aren't playing present. So like if the flutes aren't playing, we do want to have at least one flute staff. And let's say that we want flutes 1 and 2 to show if the other flutes aren't showing. Well, there's a way of specifying that in the labels control file, and the one that we're using actually has those kinds of controls built into it. And so if now we go back to our command prompt and we type labels Z01A and just process this to do a French scoring, the result will be this. Here we have the A sequence, which before had the piccolos and the flutes and the oboes, and it has the flutes represented because I've told labels always retain flutes 1 and 2 if none of the other flutes are being retained. And here's the English horn staff, and none of the other oboe staves, because the way it works is if one of the oboe staves, if any from that family, is being retained, then don't show any others. But if none are being shown, then do show the combined oboe 1 and 2 staff. And here's the B file, and so we've got all the clarinets plus the bassoons, which would normally be discarded if it weren't for the setting in the control file that I'm using. Here's the horns, there's representative chord staff, and here's the trumpets and the trombones represented there. All right, so this is great, but now we have 6 files for data that could easily fit in one file. So there's no problem there. We just go back and we execute labels, reading in this sequence that's been edited already, and we use the combine switch to combine the data into a single file. And I just called it xx.mus for fun here. And here is the result. It's combined all of the data. Now we could have done that with the combine command within the score program, but say you have to do this on a lot of files where you can batch process this using the command line switch that labels provides. Now if I BJ'd this, it'll compress everything down, but you see you still have problems here because we have bar lines that need to be extended in the middle and over here, and then up here this needs to be edited. And who wants to do any of that? Well, we don't have to, because we can have the labels program do it for us. So now we go back and we just simply process this with labels, and it's done. And now everything has been edited. So this concludes our exploration of the SEPFILE command, which has allowed us to go from a French score to a German score and then back again. And next we will cover queuing.